Hey everyone, we're back with Red Road Paranormal. My name is Kristina Bloom. I am descendant from Alaskan Natives, not currently tribally affiliated, and I am also a member of the Adirondack Park Paranormal Society. So on over to my buddy Rez here, who's going to tell you all about his history.
Hi everyone, I'm Rez. I'm enrolled Stockbridge Muncie, Band of Mohicans. I'm also a paranormal investigator, cryptid investigator with the Wisconsin-based team, Cryptids Anomalies in the Paranormal Society. As you can see, I'm wearing my shirt today. So go ahead,
Awesome.
Kristen.
Well, I would like to introduce you all to my friend Kurt Sampson. He is the director and curator of the museum at Dodge County Historical Society, interpretive volunteer at Effigy Mounds National Monument, and principal at Sampson Archaeology and Consulting. And he's an archaeologist, in case you hadn't picked up on that. And Kurt's also a very interesting fellow and somebody who's fun to hang around. I think the first thing that I wanted to know, Kurt, about you is what got you interested in effigy mounds and what are effigy mounds?
Well, I'll tell you what an effigy mound is first. Effigy mounds are prehistoric Native American burial mounds that date between about 500 to 600 AD up until about 1200 AD. So there's a 5 to 700 year period there where they're constructing burial mounds made out of earth in the shape of animals on the ground. They're in what we would call, I guess, plain view or on side view. So if you imagine like a cat laying on its side, you would see like two legs, a tail, and a head. And these are, in many cases, the Native American people at that time were basically recreating their cosmological belief system on the landscape and their religious belief system. And they are also representative of supernatural beings in the Native American belief system. And a lot of Native Americans in the Upper Great Lakes, in particular, they tend to segregate their belief system uh, into an upper, lower, middle world, especially in the past, where you have beings of the upper world like the Thunderbirds, things of that nature, thunderers, beings of this plane, mammals, human beings. And then they also have this whole other mythological realm of the underworld where they have beings such as serpents and long tailed panthers and things of that nature that mean certain things in their belief system. And these mounds are meant to represent those different spiritual realms on the landscape. Now,
Okay.
so you have in southeastern Wisconsin, we have a lot of what we would refer to as lower world pantheon mounds, things that are water spirits in particular, like long-tailed panther type mounds that you see represented in places like Lizard Mound State Park. Now, you asked me about how I got into mounds. That's actually a pretty interesting story. I knew nothing about mounds until I was in third or fourth grade. And usually, right around fifth grade is when most children in Wisconsin will start to learn about social studies. And I had a teacher named Mrs. Beveron. I'll never forget her. She's one of my favorite teachers back in the day. She was interested in Native American culture, and she made it a point to try to give us some introduction to that at a very young age, in as early as third and fourth grade. Growing up in Cedarburg, just south of West Bend, we had the opportunity to take field trips to what at the time was called Lizard Mound County Park. And if you remember, a lot of people don't know this, but uh, back in the 1960s, there was an archaeologist named Parsons from the Milwaukee Public Museum who went to Lizard Mound to excavate some mounds and to try to find intact burials that were in mounds. And he excavated about half the mounds that were in the site. And they found the burial of a young woman in a short cigar-shaped linear mound. And so then somebody got the bright idea to build a cement retaining wall around the burial, exposed burial, and put a piece of plexiglass over it. And at the time, of course, this was a really bad idea. And of course, the Native American community was not happy about it. And our teacher, when she took us there on a couple of field trips, she was using that uh, open air exhibit, if you will, as a moral lesson, more or less by asking us, how would you feel if somebody dug up your grandmother and put a piece of plexiglass, over the top of her? And when I was in fourth grade, I saw this burial at the park, and I'll never forget it. It was a beautiful, crisp fall day in October, and we had about maybe 30 kids on the bus with us, and went and we stopped at that mound. And I don't know, it sounds kind of corny, but something happened to me that day. I saw that burial, and I was just dumbstruck by it, and I couldn't believe that somebody had actually done something like that. And the interesting part of it is something transformative happened to me that day. I was called to be a mound man, so to speak, or a mound protector. And even though I didn't realize it at the time, but the funny thing I can remember about that was that a lot of the kids moved on from that mound and they were walking through the trails to go to another part of the park. And for whatever reason, I lingered behind and I stood by that mound for a really long time. And so much so that somebody else had to come back. Some of the other kids were sent back to find out where I was and bring me back to the rest of the group. And then inadvertently, over the course of my life, right at that moment, really, I got extremely interested in mounds and all things Native American for the most part. And uh, initially when I went to college, my first love was not archaeology. It was I had a history degree, and I had some mixed reservations about the practice of archaeology, actually. And I knew I would never become a burial sites archaeologist because I didn't believe in that kind of thing. And I didn't think that these mounds should be excavated or disturbed in any way. But I had enough of an interest in anthropology that I decided, because I had the opportunity to become one of the first people to graduate from La Crosse with a Bachelor of Science in Archaeology. So I took that opportunity after I had already graduated with a history degree, and then went on to graduate school at UW Milwaukee eventually to, finish up graduate work in history and archaeology. That's how I eventually got to Dodge County.
Okay. That's quite a
Interesting.
journey.
Yeah, and when I got interested in mounds that day in fourth grade, I could not stop talking about them. I mean, it was mounds everything. And I had a couple of older brothers that were already in high school that had driver's licenses. And back then there wasn't any kind of internet, so you couldn't just go on the internet and look up, where there were mounds in Wisconsin. And but I did know that there were quite a few of them in Wisconsin state parks. So I would make my older brother Sam drive me around the state, and that began a lifelong pursuit of visiting as many Native American sites as I could over the last 40 plus years. And I have literally been to over 800 effigy mound sites in the state of Wisconsin alone over the last 40 years. And
Wow.
that's
Yeah.
eventually what led me to writing the book that I wrote, the Indian Mounds of the Horicon Marsh and the Upper Rock River, which is a very site specific regional book about mounds. But that's my neck of the woods as being the director and curator of the Dodge County Historical Society. So I knew a lot about the mounds in that particular region.
Well, since you brought up the book, where can people get it?
Well, I'll show you. I'll do a little plug here. This
Here
is
you
the
go. Do a plug. Yes.
cover of the book right here.
Well, you gotta show us. All right.
There we
Yep.
go.
500 plus pages long. The book is, you can get it through me. Um, you can send a check or money order to my address, which is, I'll say it slow, 2377 North 71st Street in Wauwatosa. And the book is $48, which includes the price of the book and the shipping and handling. Since it's a large 8.5 by 11 format book and nearly 500 pages long, it was a little bit more expensive to produce. Actually, it was very expensive to publish that book. And when we send it out, since it's a pretty sizable book, it costs a little bit more money for the shipping. But It's well worth the price. We've gotten a lot of we've sold about 120 books so far, and just by having it for about a month now, and we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback about the book. So people can also drop me a line at Kurt Sampson 1968 at gmail.com, and I can send them some additional information about how they can get it. You can also purchase it at the Dodge County Historic Society as well.
Nice. I'll be hitting you up in the future. I'm going to want an autographed copy of it. Just to let you
Absolutely.
know.
Yeah,
No problem.
absolutely. So you're
I
working on a
autograph every copy.
Awesome. And you're working on a second book now, I saw.
I am working on a second book. I just started this last week. One of the very first scientific published books in the state of Wisconsin was The Antiquities of Wisconsin as Surveyed and Described by Increased Lapham. And he, in 1850, approached an organization called the American Antiquarian Society, and today we know them as the Smithsonian. And he was able to acquire funds, about $500, which was a lot of money back then.
Mm-hmm.
And he was given the opportunity to go around the southern third of the state and survey as many mound sites as he could find, and then make survey maps and eventually woodcut pressed plat maps that were published in a sizable volume by the Smithsonian in 1855. So interestingly, my good friend Martha Berglund and her co-author, who coincidentally is from Cedarburg, Paul Hayes, they wrote the definitive Increased Lapham biography about 5 years ago. That's been out, called Studying Wisconsin. But nobody has taken up the challenge, if you will, of revisiting Antiquities of Wisconsin, which has been in publication for about 168 years now. So what I'm doing is I'm going back and I'm revisiting that publication. And one of the things that Lapham did was there were dozens and dozens of correspondences between a lot of entities as he was preparing to do this project to write that book. And he also took a lot of field notes that he was sending back to his wife while he was in the field of 1850, 1851, and 1852. And even though he wrote the book Antiquities, a lot of the backstory of how he was getting around the countryside and what he was seeing in the early stages of Euro-American settlement of Wisconsin is really intimately described in his field notes. So I'm going back through that, and I'm going to publish all the original field notes and the original maps, and kind of tell that backstory about not only why he decided to do this mapping of the mounds, but what it also meant to the state of Wisconsin at that time and what it means to us today. It's a very important work. Many of the mound sites that Lapham surveyed in the 1850s no longer exist, so they're really the only reference we have of these sacred sites that once existed in certain parts of the landscape. So it was a hugely monumentally important book at the time, and it still is today. And it's still used by archaeologists today.
That's amazing.
So that's
Very
the goal
cool.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, Rez, I know that you're also energy sensitive like I am. When you go to mound sites, and we actually have never talked about this, so this is interesting to me too. But when I go to a mound site, I feel it energetically.
Absolutely.
You know, I
No, there's no
feel
doubt.
the energy of the spirits there, and I feel I can even feel like if there's a cryptid around, like say Bigfoot, because we had discussed this off air before we came on, and about how we were out there one evening and it started getting dark and we both got this feeling of fear that just kind of ran through us, and how we booked it out of there. And I'm talking to Kurt now, not Rez, because Rez and I still need to go do some exploring. But um
Yes, we do.
but I found it interesting that the correlation, I guess, in my own experience with cryptids near effigy mounds. And I'm just wondering if either one of you have had any experience like that as well.
No, I haven't. I've gone to certain areas where I picked up different energies of our tribal people being out there, but far as anything else, not really. And I haven't really dug too much into going out to the different effigy mound sites myself, which it's on my to-do list. I do want to go check them out and see what I can pick up on when I'm out there. I know members of my team have gone to a couple of them over the years and really haven't been able to get any information or anything from them. So I'm curious with me being an enrolled member and my heritage, if I go out there and try to communicate, if possibly we can set up some kind of form of communication.
That could be interesting. Yeah, I agree
Well, I
that
can
that
tell you from my experience over the years that I have never ever walked on a mound site without getting some initial feeling about the site one way or another. The one example I can give you was about maybe 7 years ago. I was in the southwest part of the state, down in the lower Wisconsin Riverway, down by some famous mound sites like Frank's Hill. And there's a site that's right along the Mississippi River down there that is actually on DNR land that a lot of people don't know about. And I was able to find this site off the beaten path, back quite a ways to find this place. And it actually has a DNR parking lot that's not really marked well at all. And if you don't really know where this site is, most people don't know where it is. But um, I happened to be alone that day. Was actually traveling back from doing some work at Effigy Mounds National Monument in the southwest part of the state, or down in northeastern Iowa, and stopped at this site on a bright sunny day, and instantaneously got the feeling that I was not welcome on the site that day. And stepped onto the site, didn't feel right about it, was by myself, felt that there was a presence that was kind of telling me, not today, not today. So I listened to that, and I've done that in several occasions where, you get that feeling. And but then on the flip side, about 3 years later, I was near that site again, traveling back and forth, and I decided to give it another shot. And so I parked the car and walked way back into this site. And on that particular day, it had a completely different feel. It was welcoming, and felt like I was welcome and could walk around, and definitely a spirit presence. But there have been on numerous occasions over the years where I've walked on sites and gotten a feeling that you were not welcome on that particular day. And I've always abided by those feelings. The spirits
smart.
don't want you there. They let you know it. And I've also been on sites where we've had Native American friends with us, and they've performed minor ceremony, which in some ways helped alleviate some of the spirit activity or the feelings that you might get on being on those sites. And um, so, yeah, it's always good to go out there with an open heart and open mind and listen to what's going on, and make sure that you're being respectful and following, you know, whatever the spirits are telling you that day. And a lot of what I've learned about how to conduct yourself on a mound site, I've learned from Ho Chunk friends of mine, people like
Mhm.
Bill Quackenbush and John Green Deer, and people like that. I never ever walk on a site without having some type of offering, whether it's tobacco or even food, a food item maybe, or something to offer up to the old ones that are on the site. And it was John Greendeer who taught me to address the spirits in a certain way by introducing yourself and thanking them
Mhm.
for letting you come onto the site, and acknowledging four cardinal directions and laying tobacco. And I've gotten special tobacco from some Native American friends of mine, and actually a really nice deerskin beaded tobacco bag that another Native American friend gave me for that purpose. So those are things that I've been treasuring for several years. And um, so yeah, there's always a way to approach these sites and to do it with respect,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
listening.
Yep.
And I have
Yeah.
found that to be important in both the paranormal world and in the spirit world, as far as, you know, as far as Native American, as far as even any kind of culture, but to approach with humbleness and to approach in a respectful way. And I'm sorry, Rez, go ahead. I cut you off.
It's fine. That was actually, he answered one of my questions before I even had a chance to bring it out. It was about, are you offering, are you acknowledging them, stuff like that. Because I know, like, every investigation I go on, whether it's out in the woods or a paranormal investigation, before I start or do anything or even enter the property, I'm dropping tobacco down, saying, "Hey, I'm here to honor you. I'm here to learn from you, tell your story. I'm here to communicate with you, and just keeping it real. Like you got to introduce yourself. You got to give them the offerings. Because if you don't, then they're not gonna respond with you, and they're not gonna want you there, and they will
That's
make
right.
their presence known."
It's all about
Yeah,
respect.
that's right.
Yep.
And I've actually, with the mounds work that I do, on the flip side, we can bring this up as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've been running the Effigy Mounts initiative since about 2015, and that actually came about as a Facebook page where I just started a Facebook page where anybody and everybody could just post anything, well, within reason, about what they wanted to share about their experiences on mount sites, and whether it was photographs or videos or stories or research or whatever it would be. And unfortunately, that was right around the time where we had the attack on the Burial Sites Protection Act in the state of Wisconsin, where um, some senators thought it would be a good idea to listen to their special interests to dismantle the Burial Sites Protection Act because of the greed of one man who owned Winger Corporation, who wanted to destroy a catalog burial site on a quarry site that he was operating. And that particular bill, fortunately, was defeated, and I was able to be instrumental in helping to organize the Capitol rally, where we had the 12 or 13 tribes of the Upper Great Lakes send delegations of people, tribal people, to protest at the state capitol back in 2015. And I don't know if you were a part of that at all, Christina, that
I
back
was
then, but
I was not, no.
it was a bitterly, bitterly cold day, and but we had somewhere around 5,000 people there, I think, that day, mostly Native American people, and that case went all the way to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and even though they were a pretty conservative court, they struck that bill down and made sure that the Burial Sites Protection Act wasn't overturned. And but since then, what I've been doing is I go around the state and I work with private and public landowners that have mound sites on their property, and we work with them to not only get them cataloged so they fall under the full protection of the Burial Sites Protection Act, but we also work with the landowners because they have a lot of questions about being wanting to be educated about what the mounds are and what they mean. And we also help them get into the tax relief program, where if you're a landowner and you have mounds on your property, you can get that portion of your property taxes written off if you're helping to preserve the mound site. And then what we do is we take our crews out there and we help to care for the mounds and clean them up, take the woody vegetation off the mounds. And but I have actually gotten a little bit of a blowback about doing that kind of work from some Native people that feel that, you know, me being uh, a man of white European descent, some people feel that that's that type of work I shouldn't be engaging in, and I completely understand that, and I respect that opinion, but I just know that in my own sense that I was called to do that work. And I've always asked the Native American community about what they thought about the work. And by and large, most of the community is very supportive of what we do, but we do have some detractors, and I can also respect that as well.
I want to say thanks for what you're doing, personally from my end here. Someone's got to do it, and I don't see a problem with you going out there and doing this as long as you're doing it respectfully and you're doing it with a good heart. And it appears to me you are. You
I
know,
appreciate that. Yeah,
My
we
feeling
always we
about
always
that,
try to go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, my feeling about that too is if the native people, and I'm one of them, but if we aren't going to go out there and do the work, then maybe we should just step back and let someone else who wants to do it, or
Well,
who's been
yeah,
called
and
to it do it, you know?
and every time I do a what we call a mound care, we like to use the word care, not clean. Clean
Hmm.
has this sense that you're just it's really mound care, and it's not just the care of the mounds themselves. It's the care of the site, the entire site proper, and the people that are there are active mound sites where native people, indigenous people still perform ceremony at these sites and still seek them out as a source of spirituality,
Hmm.
and and those are the people that have given me a lot of advice about how to approach the work that we've been doing in the respectful manner that it needs to be done. So I feel real good about it, and it's something that we're going to continue to do even this winter. Most of the work is done in the winter time when the ground is frozen, so we're not doing additional impact to the site. You know, a lot of the mounds we don't ever walk on mounds unless we absolutely have to take an invasive woody species off it or something. And like I said, usually it's done in the wintertime, so we're not impacting the mounds further. Most of these mounds are well over 1,000 years old, and over 85% of the effigy mounds in Wisconsin have been destroyed. We have about 3,400 of them left out of about 30 to 40,000 that once existed. So the remaining mounds that are still here, they're hugely important to our. I like to use the word collective cultural heritage at this point because, even though they're directly Native American related, it's really up to all of us at this point to care for these mounds and to be watching out for these sacred sites.
I
And
agree.
what I've,
yeah.
I even got a little bit of blowback from some people about writing the book about the mounds as well. And in my experience over the last 40 years, what I have found beyond a doubt is that the more that people are educated about these mounds and their cultural significance and the time frame that they're placed in, not only in the past but today, the better that these sites are protected. It's when you have people that are ignorant that are going out there and don't understand not only the Native American people and what these sites mean to them is when you're running into problems with people. And so education is a huge part of the Effigy Mounds initiative. And it's really the foremost aspect of what I've tried to do with the Effigy Mounds initiative Facebook page. And we have nearly 8,000 people on that page now, which is a lot of people that are
Hmm.
being educated about the importance of these cultural sites. So,
If
yeah,
someone
but
wants to get
Very
involved
cool.
in those efforts, do they get a hold of you through your email address or?
yeah, they can get a hold of me at the Dutch County Historic Society or again through my email, which is just Kurt Sampson 1968 at gmail.com.
Okay.
Or they can private message me on Facebook as well or friend me or whatever. And we've got a crew of about 20 people that are routinely involved in mountain site care days that we do.
Hmm.
And sometimes not everybody can make it, but where it's a really good group. They're all in tune with the aspects of the respectful nature of the work that we're doing, and everybody is kind of taught when they first come out about what's expected and why we do the work and how we do it and the manner of which we do it. And we're a fun group as well. I mean, it's not all just you know it's not totally brutal grunt work by any mean. We're basically just, cutting invasive woody vegetation out and trees off the top of the mounds so the mounds don't get damaged by that further, and basically just caring for the site. And so yeah, it's a lot of fun. We go out there and and it's a really good learning experience for a lot of people. Bring their younger children out there, and a lot of my indigenous friends will show up and sometimes bring their children as well. So it's an opportunity for uh, not only indigenous people but people to connect themselves to something greater than themselves, so to speak. So yeah, it's been pretty successful so far. Our recent project is actually working in a county park called Nitschke Mounds County Park, which is just outside of Horicon, between
Mhm.
Horicon and Burnett Township. And Nitschke is very much like Lizard Mound Park. It's a park that's open to the public where people can walk in and amongst the mounds and learn about them. And we've been working with the Ho Chunk in particular, have really kind of taken an active lead in the indigenous community to uh, work with my organization and other people that are doing similar work around the state to give us information about how they see that these types of projects should be done. And one thing that I've always made perfectly clear on the Effigy Mounds Initiative is that the Native American voice takes the forefront and the precedence of anything that we do. Um, and we always try to, you know, adhere to that. So far it's been pretty successful.
That's awesome.
Very
I was
cool.
just thinking that there were people who might like to help but don't even know it's a possibility.
All
So
right.
Yeah, and
Uh,
you don't have to be physically fit by any means, and if you're not physically able to do the little bit of amount of work that we do, we still encourage people to come out to the site and participate by just being there and learning and providing support in other ways. And there are a lot of people that do that as well. Rez, you had a comment. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I want to put my little science hat on here now, and with surveying these mounds, have you guys ever had a chance to work with lidar to see actually everything that's in the ground?
Yeah,
And
lidar. What makes my mounds book different than any other mound book that's been published is we relied a lot on producing lidar images of every known mound site in the Upper Rock River Basin and in Dodge County around the Horicon Marsh. And my co-author Bill Volkert, he was an ornithologist, one of the top ornithologists for the DNR, and used to run the Horicon Wildlife Refuge Center there on Highway 28. And he got to know the mound sites by just working on the marsh as a bird specialist. And he also founded an organization that's called the Rock River Archaeological Society, which is actually now uh, a satellite of or a chapter of the Wisconsin Archaeological Society. And that's how I met him at the Marsh Center, because I was asked to lecture there on a number of occasions. And so LiDAR came out to the general public about 15 years ago. And Dodge County was one of the first counties that had LiDAR application in the state that they made available to the general public. And that LiDAR application has gotten more advanced over the last 15 years, where the resolutions and things have gotten better.
yeah,
And we actually provide a LiDAR image for nearly every mound site that we documented in Dodge County. And there are about 158 mound sites that still exist in Dodge County, with just over 1,079 mounds. But we estimate that there were probably about 2,000 mounds in Dodge County at one time. And as a result of using LiDAR technology, we were able to identify 8 previously undocumented, unknown mound sites that had never been documented before, that were uh, off the beaten path, that nobody knew existed.
and for
And
yeah,
we
those
were
of
able
us
to
who don't know what LiDAR is,
LiDAR is an acronym that stands for light detection and ranging. And what it was a top secret government mapping program during the Apollo missions to the moon in the 1970s, early 1970s, where they were using this laser satellite technology to it sends a laser beam down and it detects elevations in the ground. But what's really neat about it is that it strips away the vegetation, so it's very much like a Google Earth application where you can zoom it right in on a particular parcel of land. But it has different applications where you can strip away vegetation, and all you see is the topography of the land. And it
Okay.
looks, they call it grayscale or slope lidar. And it actually, when they strip away the vegetation and it's in that scale, it actually looks like you're looking at the surface of the moon in many respects. But what's interesting is that if you have effigy mound shapes like bears and birds and panthers and things like that, they just pop right out on the landscape. I mean, there's no mistaking that it's an effigy mound. Conical burial mounds and other types of burial mounds that are in dome shapes are a little bit more hard to discern unless you know that you're looking at a particular spot that is already documented as a conical burial mound site. But yeah, we used a professional cartographer, a guy named Doug Norgord, who's out of Madison, who helped us to give us a higher resolution slope lidar image of most of the mound sites that we documented in Dodge County. So, what's interesting about that is there's a saying that goes like this. It's called "lidar doesn't lie." So whatever you see on lidar on a lidar image is showing you exactly what's there.
Yeah.
So even though you might be on the site and might be thinking that you're seeing things maybe a little bit differently, if you look at the LiDAR image, it shows you exactly the prehistoric features that are there. So it's a really it's been a real boon for archaeology because they're using it in the Amazon basin to identify Mayan sites in particular that are completely covered with jungle vegetation. And over the last 10 years, they've identified 210 Mayan city sites in the jungle that nobody knew even existed.
Wow.
So it's hugely important for it. What's nice about it, it's a non-invasive way to do
Yeah.
archaeology without actually having to go out and excavate a site. And
That's what I
nobody
like
wants
about it.
Yeah, that's what's nice about it. And just so everybody knows, we no longer excavate burial mounds in the state of Wisconsin. In 1986, the Tommy Thompson, who was governor of the state of Wisconsin at that time, signed into law the Burial Sites Protection Act. So all mound sites are protected now. Archaeologists no longer dig them, and they're also protected from any kind of development near them. So um, it's one of those things that's a very unfortunate part of the history of archaeology where as far back as really the 1820s and 30s, people started digging in the mounds and not fully understanding what they were, and people were, of course, relic hunting and looking for artifacts and mounds. And then, of course, there was a lot of racism tied to it as well, especially in the mid 1800s when you have systematic removal of Native American people off their tribal lands. And that's when people started coming with all this nonsense about that the Native Americans were not the builders of the mounds, and that these mound sites were not the ancestors to indigenous people in North America. Well, now today, of course, we know that that's not that these are indigenous sites and that they are the ancestors of the Native American people on the landscape. And and that's one of the things that we've also had to overcome with the Effigy Mounds Initiative as well. There every once in a while you'll get somebody that is ignorant and undereducated that will chime in on that site and say something that is not appropriate. And so we're hoping to correct those attitudes and those that systemic racism that still exists in some ways towards Native American people in the state. So I think we've done a pretty good job of that.
I think you have too.
Yep.
I know. Yeah, I'm a member of that Facebook page, so I see a
So
lot
am
of
I.
what gets posted, and I appreciate personally the work that you do because I don't think that really people understand that history isn't just world wars. You know,
Yeah,
His
Yeah.
yeah,
history is culture, history is anthropology, history is archaeology. It's all of this mixed together, and I feel like for the first time since I don't know, since anybody outside of the country has landed here, that Native American culture is now starting to get a resurgence in I don't know any other word but respect.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, I've seen it over the last 40 years. I can remember being an undergraduate 30 years ago at La Crosse and taking as many, you know, history and archaeology related classes about Native American peoples that I could take, and trying to get my hands on anything that I could read about it, and by famous authors like Vine Deloria and people like that. They're that published anything and everything about Native American history, and you can totally see that it's you know very slowly creeping back,
Yeah.
uh, with people's respect. And I think that, in the same token, when you have the internet and you have social media, as bad as social media can be on one side, it also has been good for disseminating information in a good light as well about, indigenous people and their sites, and helping to educate, people about why these things are important. And so yeah, it's definitely happening. And you see it as the effigy mounds initiative grows and people get more engaged. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I was like any other Euro American white man that had my own cultural biases growing up, being raised in a Christian environment, Judeo-Christian environment, with those biases. And as a an archaeologist and a historian, I have to be continuously aware of my own cultural biases when writing about Native American things, and doing things that I do. And so I'm constantly reminding myself of not only my own racism that I've had to overcome. Racism is about ignorance and not being taught what is, what's
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
You can
Yeah.
overcome racism. And anybody that doesn't believe that there is racism towards Native American people and systemic racism, they're just not paying attention.
Exactly.
And and I admittedly have had to overcome that. I was raised in a very conservative white environment growing up in Cedarburg, Wisconsin. And when I went to college, man, it was a real eye opener about how sheltered some people can be in the suburbs. And you know
Yeah.
that's something, as a researcher and a writer, I've had to overcome that and be very aware of those biases. And I think we did a good job of that in our book, for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, I can't wait to get my copy. I need to order that from you.
That's right. No pressure.
No
I'll be
pressure.
hitting
Get
you up
on it.
after Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be hitting you up after
Well,
Christmas.
my co-author Bill Volkert is retired from the DNR now, and he's in his early 60s, and he travels all over the world, and he has for several years. And he's been in northern Africa for the last 7 weeks, and he's just coming back on Friday. He's been in Senegal and Morocco and a bunch of other places, and traveling around the world looking for birds. That's what he does. I travel around looking for mounds. He travels around looking for birds. Um, but yeah, we're gonna have a big push in the next couple of weeks with the book, trying to get it out there for people that may be interested for Christmas presents and things of that nature. And
Nice.
um, then after that, we're going to be getting it on Amazon and other places where it's more readily available. So
Very
yeah.
cool. Very cool. No, just out of curiosity, investigator in me was wondering if you ever worked with a paranormal research team to kind of out on these mounds to see how the spirits are feeling about the work that you're doing.
Well, I can tell you this. I have not worked with a specific paranormal investigative team in the field on a mound site, but I have worked with them at the Dodge County Historical Society, because our 130-year-old building is definitely haunted. If you want to use the word haunted, there is paranormal activity that has been going on in our building for many, many years. I've been there for 16 years now, And myself and the former curator and several of our members and board members have experienced a lot of paranormal activity. And there's a group that's called Wisconsin Paranormal, I believe, that they're out of Menominee, Wisconsin, with a guy named Howard. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I forget Howard's last name off the top of my head, but they have come to the museum on a couple of different occasions, on 3 occasions actually, and set up their equipment and stayed overnight in the building and have caught some paranormal activity. Most of the what I would say paranormal activity that I've experienced on mound sites has occurred basically with my own visitations and being
Mhm.
out there not only by myself but with other people, like the experience that Christina and I had at Lizard Mound that one time, and my own personal experiences of just seeing things and feeling things on mound sites. So, but not so. To answer your question, I've never been out there with a crew, but I'd be willing to visit that if you guys are ever interested in doing some actual paranormal investigating on a site.
Yeah, I think it'd be interested to see how the other side feels about the type of work you're doing and how you're honoring them. See if they give you validation for what you're doing.
Well, I will say this. I need to take a step back. Um, I do have two friends that are psychic or empathic psychic mediums. One of them is a young woman named Brandy Martinez, who is out of the Janesville, Wisconsin area. And I used to be a little skeptical, like most people, about uh, you know, part of my upbringing and educational background, going through grad school in history and anthropology. One of the things that they do is that they really pound into your head empirical science, empirical science, empirical science. You need to approach things from a scientific standpoint. And so once you've had that background like I have, and at the graduate level, I tend to be approach things with a little bit of a skeptical eye. Okay.
Hmm.
But I've learned over the years that science cannot definitely explain everything that's going on in our realm, so to speak. And there are definitely people like Brandy that I've met um, that I'm absolutely convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that these people do have ability to not only feel but see things in their mind's eye, so to speak.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you one experience I had earlier this year, earlier late this late last spring, was Brandy had come up to the Dodge County Historic Society to meet with me because she was interested in the mounds and she wanted to have a sit down with me like you guys are doing right now and ask me some questions and things. And then, since I had some time that day, her and I went out and we visited a couple of mound sites, and she was instantaneously getting feedback and feelings going on the sites. And I actually, uh well, for a lack of a better way to say it, I uh she asked me to test her abilities in a way that wouldn't be readily apparent to her but would be to me. And what I mean by that is I took her to a mound site where the mound that was on that particular site had been completely destroyed. But we were standing right on the spot where a mound was at one time before it was destroyed by the construction of a Catholic church back in the 1850s. And she instantaneously got a feeling that this was a former, well, I shouldn't say former, it was a Native American sacred site that where there were human burials without any prompting from me whatsoever. And then she actually went home and in her mind's eye or her vision that she got at that site, produced a really interesting piece of artwork where she actually drew the shape of the mound that was there and the impressions that she got from the spirits that were still on that site. And there's another young woman that I know that is also a medium that was at Nitschke Mounds at a care day one time, who was getting some impressions from some of the spirits there that uh, initially let me back up a step. So when I first started working at Nitschke Mounds, I had my own personal experiences and feelings where I felt that that site was spiritually devoid and almost spiritually dead. And the reason I say that is because that site had been desecrated so badly, and many of the human remains that were excavated on that site are not at that site. They're at the Milwaukee Public Museum in their anthropology storage facility. And this site was excavated back in 1927 by a guy named Will McKern, who was an archaeologist back in that day. And for a long time, when I was working on that site, people would ask me, "Well, what are your impressions of this site? How are you feeling about this site and the work you're doing?" And for a long time, there was this like really dead space kind of in the center of my heart about that site. But the more and more that we worked on that site over the last five, this will be our fifth year going out there this winter to do some care work. The Native American people that were on the site with me got the impression that that site was being spiritually reawakened, that the spirits were happy with what we were doing, and that it was starting to be have a spiritual revitalization on that site, so to speak. So those are a couple examples of some feedback that I've gotten from some people that are very uh, that are empaths and that are people that have spiritual feelings and some medium ability to that degree. Um, but in the same token, like I said, there have been some sites that I've walked on where I could tell right off the bat that we were not welcome on site. And I don't ever question that motive by the spirits. I mean, that's their right to tell us in a roundabout way if they want us there or not. And I have to respect that, and that's fine.
Mhm.
And not all these sites were meant to be uh visited and worked on and brought to the attention of people that were not intimately connected to the site in an indigenous way, and that's fine. I mean, I'm fully aware by talking to my indigenous friends that there is ancient tribal esoteric knowledge that is not shared with outsiders, with modern
Mhm.
Euro American people, and that's perfectly fine. You have to respect that, and whatever information that I've been given over the years, and believe me, I've talked to a lot of Native American elders over the years, and seeking information for my own curiosity, and some of that information I've been privy to, and some of it I haven't been, and that's fine, and I understand that, and that's just the way it is.
Yep. Yeah,
Yep.
the native culture would keep a lot of stuff to inside and to their chest, close to us, and I'm hoping with this podcast that we get to share some of that to enlighten everyone else out there. You
Mhm.
know,
That's for sure.
that was one of the things that
You know,
was.
when you deal with different tribal people too, whether they're Menominee or Stockbridge Munsee or Ho Chunk or Potawatomi, and even some Ojibwe people that I know, they all have different tribal stories and myths and legends and tribal, esoteric spiritual tribal knowledge that is in some ways very unique to their own tribes, but yet there are certain things that are also kind of uh, across the board, so to speak, in a lot of the spiritual beliefs.
Right.
And
Right.
some things are practiced and some things are are kept to by, people that are spiritual keepers of those traditions, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
I agree completely. And I want to tell you personally, I really appreciate the work that you do. I would have never learned anything about the mounds or anything about what they were about or when they happened or when people made them or any of that without someone, regardless of ethnic background, bringing that information forward. And excuse me, I
Well,
have
I
a
appreciate
frog
that.
in my
And like I
throat.
said, it kind of, I always use the word, maybe corny isn't the word I should be using, but I mean, there's no doubt that something that I was called to do the type of work that I do. And, over my life, I've just been called back to it time and time and time and time again, to the point where it's just become integral part of, who I am and what I do and what I'm about. And that's the only way I can describe it,
Right.
and
And we can
I
speculate as to why that is. I mean, it could be past life connections. It could be, just drawn to it for whatever reason. I mean, there's plenty of reasons, but does it really
well,
matter?
the one thing that's interesting to me too is that when I go around the state of Wisconsin in particular to a lot of different sites, and I often have a lot of like really strange like deja vu type experiences when I'm going around and visiting a lot of these different sites and things, and things of this nature in regard to the mounds and things just seem to come to me out of nowhere. And the more and more that I study it and try to understand it, the more and more things are being revealed, so to speak.
Mhm.
And I'm having epiphanies almost on a weekly basis about how I'm learning about different aspects of what I think I'm seeing and learning and hearing and doing. And so I try to be receptive to that, and I try to you know take something from it and learn from it. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen over the next few years. As the as these types of things are becoming more to the forefront of people on social media, and people are beginning to be more educated about indigenous culture, and a lot of it also kind of harkens back to the the pipeline incident in the Dakotas a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
where you have the pipeline at Stand Rock. That really woke a lot of people up, I think. And so I think that it's happening. It's definitely happening, where there's a spiritual reawakening of Native of North America and
Mm-hmm.
indigenous peoples. And sometimes it's frustrating, even to white people like me, that it doesn't happen faster. But I think
Right.
that we're doing our part to you know being an educator. Really, first and foremost, even though I'm a museum curator, I'm really an educator.
Right.
And being a historian, and I do a lot of school group lectures to kids from elementary school all the way up through college, and done a little bit of teaching at the college level at some of the smaller UW schools, and a lot of high school and middle school lectures about different aspects of history, and including Native American things. So, um, I try to be humble in it, and respectful, and let the true indigenous voice take the forefront in whatever I do. Not being indigenous myself, I feel that I have to continuously educate myself about again, my own biases, and continue to read. I'm a voracious reader of all things Native American. And there was an archaeologist named Robert Hall, who was a World War veteran who was actually of Stockbridge descent. He was part Stockbridge Muncie, and I don't know if you ever heard of him, Rez, but he was a World War II veteran that came back after World War II, and that's when anthropology really got its blossoming, when the men from World War II were coming back and going to college, and that's where scientific archaeology, if you will, really became a discipline in the 50s and 60s. And Bob Hall, being Native American, decided that he wanted to be an indigenous archaeologist and study. Well, he essentially became an expert in Native American religious belief systems, and he spent most of his career at the uh, teaching at University of Illinois at Champaign Urbana, but he also was one of the top curators at the State Historical Society in Illinois in Springfield for most of his career. And Bob was an early influence of mine. He wrote a book that was called The Archaeology of the Soul. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book.
I have. Yeah. In fact, I
Yeah,
read that book a long time ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he was one of the people that influenced my career early on as an archaeologist uh, to study, you know, archaeology from a Native American perspective, so to speak, and to see why certain practices in archaeology were disrespectful. And people always ask me, well, how come you don't excavate, or how come you're not on the burial sites board or something like that? And when I decided to study archaeology and get my master's degree in archaeology, I made a very conscious decision that I was not going to be trained as a burial sites archaeologist, because the last thing that I ever wanted to do was to excavate somebody else's burial, whether it was Native American or not. And archaeology is part of anthropology, which has four subfields of anthropology is four subfields. It's archaeology, cultural anthropology, linguistics, and physical anthropology. And my focus was always on pretty much in cultural anthropology. And so I never had any desire to become a burial sites archaeologist or be listed at the State Historical Society as a burial sites archaeologist. And I've had opportunities where people have approached me and said, well, where they could have hired me to done that type of archaeology. And I just don't believe that's something that we need to do. There was 100 or well over 170 years of desecration of Native American burial sites across North America, where we have a very good understanding of what these mound sites were and why they were built. And we don't. Well, I shouldn't say we know everything about why they were built, and we'll never know all that. But we know enough that they're burials of human beings, and
Mm-hmm.
that they don't need to be dug up. And so again, that's just, like I mentioned before, one of those unfortunate parts of archaeology, where archaeology is actually going through a bit of a renaissance right now as well. Since the 1960s, they've had to, and since the passage of burial sites protection acts in most states now, archaeology has had kind of uh, uh, what's the word I'm trying to use, an existential crisis, so to speak, within the field of having
Good.
to rectify what
Yeah.
they've done in the past to, you know, desecrate sites. And the good thing about it is that the next generation of archaeologists that are being trained right now, I'm kind of part of the old school because I've been around for at least 30 years, but um, the kids that are coming up now, they're being taught in slightly different ways about having to justify that path. They can never justify it, but they're going to have to come to terms with it and move on from it. And I can see that happening in archaeology right now.
I love
And,
that.
and the other thing that's happening too, which didn't happen in the past, is that archaeologists are working much more closely with indigenous people now than they ever did, and getting that feedback from the tribes and indigenous people that are in the know, elders and things like that. So that's been a real plus for the discipline as well.
I love that.
So
I
yeah,
love that. I want to have you back on again after you come out with your next book because that's
oh,
really
absolutely.
interesting to me too. Rez, any final words?
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. I'm just taking it all in. This has been
It's
a really good conversation. I look forward
absolutely.
to talking with you more in the future, even off air.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anytime you guys want to get together and visit some sites, I'll be more than happy to take you out to some sites and we can talk further. And
Oh, we'll be
I'll
hitting you
be
up.
definitely. I'll be
sure.
definitely in touch with you about that one.
All right.
Okay,
Thanks. One more time. Your email address is kurtsampson168 at gmail.com.
it's Kurt Sampson 1968,
1968.
and it's Sampson. It's Kurt with a K and Sampson with a P. So it's KurtSampson 1968 at gmail.com.
Awesome. Awesome.
Why don't
Thanks
you show
again,
us the
Thanks for
Kurt.
book
having me on,
again?
guys. I certainly appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Why
Yeah.
don't you show us the book again and give us the information for that too, for those that are
Yes.
watching and listening? You gotta bring it over more. There you
There
go.
you go.
Indian Mounds of the Horicon Marsh and the Upper Rock River by Kurt Sampson and Bill Vogert.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yep,
Thank you
that
again.
was a 12-year project to put that book together. So
Yeah, I remember you were talking about when I met you, we were talking about you were right in the process of writing that book.
yeah,
So,
it took us about
yeah.
12 years to get it done. We would start the book and put it off, start it, put it off, and then you know what the blessing in disguise was COVID.
Yeah.
Because I hate to say it that way, but everything shut down,
Mhm.
and then Bill and I had the time to sit down, and then it was about 2.5 solid years of writing and 12 years of collecting all the information and through
Yeah.
interviews and archival researches and the whole bit. So
I have to say COVID did a lot for literature.
I think it did. Yeah. If anything,
Yep.
if anything was good to come out of it, that was part of it, maybe. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much, Kurt. Thanks for taking the time out to talk with us. And Rez and I are definitely going to be hitting you up to hit some of those sites.
Yep.
outstanding. Talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
All right. Take
Awesome.
care.
Thank you.
Bye bye.